Ready Player One is the most recent Steven Spielberg film, and as many of you know, Steven Spielberg happens to be, in my opinion, the greatest director of all time. And for Ready Player One, which is based off of the best-selling novel that, again, I have not read, because, again, and I'm probably really am going to be saying this multiple times, I don't read very much these days, and I really need to. But anyway, I'm getting off topic yet again. After seeing Spielberg's last film, The Post, I actually thought to myself, A, this is the worst movie of 2017 in my opinion, and B, why the hell is it nominated for Best Picture again? But, I went into Ready Player One both hoping that Spielberg hadn't lost his touch and that The Post was just a rush job, as it did seem, because, you know, every director is allotted, you know, a couple of times to mess up, one or two, but he's made quite a few great films, so in my mind, he's, you know, he can mess up a few more times than most directors. But I go into this movie, and I will go ahead and say I was not disappointed with Ready Player One. This is another one of Spielberg's great blockbusters, like the one that started it all with Jaws, and then a few of his other ones like Close Encounters, Raiders of the Lost Ark, which for that one I will actually have a review coming up sometime in the near future. I've already planned it out and come up with talking points. I just need to actually, you know, make the video. So, okay, before I get into what I liked about Ready Player One, I should actually probably go into a bit of a description on what the story is about, just in case some of you don't know. The film is primarily set in a futuristic Ohio after an energy and resource crisis. And in order to escape this disparity in the real world, everybody escapes into this virtual reality game called the Oasis. So that's where the majority of the film actually lies. Here in the Oasis, you can be anything that you want, anyone you want to be, and you can pretty much do whatever you want with all of that. One day, the creator of this world, James Halliday, passes away, and right after he dies, he actually sends out a recorded video to pretty much any sort of media device, and in it, he states that he has left 3 keys in the Oasis, randomly placed, but also in places that mean something to him, I guess you can say. And he says that whoever gets the 3 keys wins the golden egg, and whoever owns the golden egg gets his entire fortune, as well as the ownership of the Oasis. The main story is centered around Wade Watts, whose username in the Oasis is Parzival, and Parzival is one of those thousands, maybe even millions of people who play the Oasis, and they specifically, while playing the game, they're also trying to research Halliday's life, trying to, you know, find clues to where the first key may be. And the problem is that it's been a few years since the announcement, and still nobody has actually found the first key, and they're not even really close to getting it. And it's important that somebody finds the key soon, because there's a corporation called IOI who wishes to find all of the keys, get the golden egg, and, you know, get the ownership of the Oasis, because they basically want to fuck up this perfect Oasis, I guess you could say. And this fact actually makes the quest to find the keys a race against time for the fate of the Oasis, because whoever controls the Oasis does in fact control the fate of the real world. And now for the pro and con list that I love doing nowadays, starting with the pros. So one thing that a lot of people that I noticed worrying about the movie on social media were mostly worried about the potential of the film just pandering to pop culture geeks, whether it be film, video game, you know, comic sweaties. And actually, for those of you who don't know, a sweaty is basically a word used to describe a lot of nerds who get, quote, sweaty with excitement whenever they talk about their nerdy interests. And I see nothing wrong with that, because I myself am a sweaty. But for me, the nostalgic factor is not overdone at all. I mean, these references either, there's a lot that does fill in the backdrop, which makes sense, but the majority of the ones that are just thrown in your face either have a purpose to the narrative, or they actually mean something specifically to each character. Like, one thing that I actually have to allude to, and not going into any spoilers, but Steven Spielberg actually put a shout out to his old friend, the late Stanley Kubrick, one of the greatest directors to ever live. He actually put a shout out to him in the film, and even that had a narrative purpose. This film, in my opinion, is just simply a love letter from Spielberg to the many facets of pop culture and its fans. And it's not distracting, or at least, again, not for me. I can understand why some people would find it distracting, but it wasn't for me, and it didn't take me out of the film. And I really loved picking out every avatar that I saw that I could recognize. And I just wish that I could talk about every single reference that I saw and how many that they used in the entire story that's not in the trailers, but I just can't. I can't. The performances across the board are outstanding. Ty Sheridan as Wade, with his alter ego Parzival, is very smart and strong-hearted, but the film definitely does not, it does not shy away from Wade's faults, because one thing that I have heard about the book from certain people, but enough to make me think about it, they say that while Parzival is cool, he's almost too perfect a hero, so he doesn't come across as realistic. And while he is definitely a more well-rounded person in the Oasis in this movie, because online you can naturally feel more confident when nobody knows who you really are, in the real world he's very reclusive and timid and kind of a weirdo, which I kind of dug. Then he meets another gamer named Artemis, who is played by Olivia Cooke, who some of you may remember from the first Ouija movie, I believe? I think that's where it was. I don't know. I didn't like the movie too much, so I never really paid attention. He develops a deep emotional connection and romantic feelings for Artemis immediately. And I can understand why some people, or no, I can actually understand why a good number of people would find their romantic subplot to be jarring. Hell, Mallory even she was complaining about it once we got out of the theater. But I don't have an issue with this romantic subplot because the way that I looked at it, Spielberg is basically giving us an insight into a withdrawn youth culture which exists to this day. The anonymity of the internet allows you, and you other people, however you want to see it, it allows people to be whoever they want, and people tend to be more confident in that digital image, whether it's a character in a game like World of Warcraft or in a dating profile. You'll either do like small little lies about yourself, or you'll just completely lie about who you are entirely. And I've been that same way in the past. It's much easier to connect with somebody and come out and share your true feelings about things, kind of like that, when you're interacting with somebody who does not really know who you are personally, especially for people who don't know how to interact in a face-to-face setting. I mean, hell, I've gotten to that point where I actually felt like I fell in love with somebody online just after meeting them. Then again, I'm not ashamed to admit that because, I mean, we were all young and naive once in our lives, at least a few times. I mean, I still am, just not as much naivete. And this type of romantic subplot for Parzival and Artemis works in this future dystopian world because they both live in a very shitty real world, and it just makes sense that they would immediately escape into an infatuation. Hell, it's probably one of the only times that they actually have felt truly connected with somebody in their lives outside of their own families. Out of the two leads, though, I would actually say that Olivia Cooke steals more of the show on a performance level, coming off as a badass in the game, but as a rough exterior and yet very gentle inner attitude in the real world. And of course we have Ben Mendelsohn, who a lot of people know from Bloodline on Netflix, as well as playing Director Krennic, the main villain of Rogue One: A Star Wars Story, which is, by the way, still a stupid name. Why would anybody call it a Star Wars story? Anyway, he really revels in being this corporate dickbag, Nolan Sorrento, who happens to be the CEO of IOI. So basically, he is the main antagonist of the film, and he's a standout in every single scene that he's in. I really love seeing him play a much better villain than Krennic, because I feel like his talents were kind of wasted in that role. Despite the fact that I have a pop of him, but mainly I got this before the movie came out because, I mean, you know, it kind of looks like a Grand Admiral's outfit because of how white it is, and I mean, it's a badass costume. I mean, what else am I going to say? And though James Halliday is only shown in just a couple of scenes, flashbacks pretty much, Mark Rylance gave a really good performance that made me smile, but I always felt a hint of sadness and regret just watching him, and you'll actually see what I mean when you see the movie. The story itself, for a person who has little to no knowledge of the source material outside of the basic description, I was completely floored. I loved the many narrative allusions to Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, one of my absolute favorite movies of all time. And the film just kept me guessing somehow. I know that with Mallory, she said that like she figured out the Steven Spielberg formula and it made it very predictable. But it's like, you know, two things. One, I love the formula. I don't think that there's really anything wrong with it. But then again, I'm just a little biased. And I don't know, I didn't know what was going to happen. Like, you know, it's obvious. You can draw conclusions where things are going to go, but you don't know how it's going to happen. You don't know at first where exactly each key is, or how our heroes are going to figure out each individual clue, and then where that next one is going to lead to next. I really loved it. It kept me guessing. And earlier I alluded to the whole isolated online culture with teens, but this film is very relevant to today's world culture, mostly American, but you can actually see the part of worldwide culture because of how we naturally utilize video games, movies, or whatever shows we're binging on Netflix or Hulu to escape whatever life's problems we have. And Ready Player One showcases a reality where that reliance on visual media to escape our own lives, it showcases a reality where that reliance is cranked up a higher volume. Of course, I tried to go through this in my mind without giving any spoilers away, but I'm just going to basically say the Oasis is amazing. I'm just going to leave it at that because if I go any further, then I'm definitely going to start naming off references and like little Easter eggs that I saw throughout. However, I will say that the visuals are breathtaking, the character designs are fantastic, and the action sequences are some of the best that I've seen in years. Nobody can helm a chase sequence like Steven Spielberg can, and hell, he even proved that back in 1971 with one of his first films, Duel. The car race sequence that we see in the trailers is honestly, in its entirety, it's Spielberg mastery. And actually, speaking of Spielberg mastery, we see more of it in other action sequences, especially in the end battle. He has proven himself in the past to be a master at melding multiple shots together and making it seem like you're looking at a continuous take with multiple, things and, characters moving in and out of frame. A technique that has become known as scene blocking. There were even some shots in the movie that really made it feel like you were watching somebody play a video game at some points. Sadly, little to no first-person shooter perspectives, but it still had some really nice nods to it. There were even a few shots that showcase things that I don't think could ever be done in a live-action film, or at least anything that isn't CGI heavy, because there's one particular shot involving the avatar of Sorrento, Ben Mendelsohn's character, in the third act where I thought my eyes were fucking with me. It was just so unique and amazing that the sad thing is that I can put into words what happened. I just shouldn't because it's kind of spoilery. The music was also a surprise to me. I originally knew that John Williams had been slated to compose the score, but then he ended up turning it down because he wanted to work on the post instead, and I didn't even know who the new composer was. And somehow that flew under my radar, or I heard it in passing, and I just decided to, let myself forget, in order to be a little bit more excited. But throughout listening to the score during my showing, I actually had a strong feeling due to the callbacks to Robert Zemeckis and Back to the Future and just how perfect each nod was. I was wondering, is this Alan Silvestri? And then the end credits came and confirmed it, and I thought, yes, this is amazing. And not even just because it was Alan Silvestri, but because it lived up to his name. The score for Ready Player One is the most energetic and grand score that he's done since Avengers, and may even be on par with Avengers for me. I don't think it's better, but I think it's on par. And while I absolutely love this movie, it's not perfect. Just like most films aren't perfect. There were two specific things on my con list, and I can get through these pretty quickly. First off, I do wish that a little bit more attention was focused on Wade's family life and his living situation. And then secondly, and keep in mind that this is more of a nitpick than anything, TJ Miller plays a character in the movie called IROC, or at least his avatar's name is IROC. While the character was kind of cool, every time he spoke, I just heard TJ Miller, and honestly, TJ Miller takes me out of the movie. He doesn't disappear into a role, he doesn't even seem like he's acting, he just seems like he's acting like TJ Miller. And the only time that I've ever not noticed TJ Miller was when he was in Deadpool, because, you know, it just felt right. It felt like it was his kind of character, but, like, it didn't necessarily have to be him. With all of my pros and con points out of the way, my consensus is that Ready Player One is, so far, the best film of 2018. And if you haven't seen it yet, just do yourself a favor and go out now. Go out to fucking see it. It's got everything that a film fan and a nerd like myself wants. This is the kind of movie that I've been waiting for years for. I mean, it's got a world you can escape to, it's got interesting characters, a great narrative, great visuals, exciting action, a sense of adventure, which I haven't felt with a Steven Spielberg movie in a while. And this is really a return to form for Spielberg, bringing about a new blockbuster of his, a word that without him would not exist. And with that, I end my review. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, please don't hesitate to hit that like button. And if you love what I've done on my channel and you haven't subscribed, please don't hesitate to subscribe too. Well, all that's left to say is thanks once again, and farewell until the next video.